Math can do a lot of things. It can be art, but it can't lie. The Life of Chuck comes to us from Neon Studios and writer-director Mike Flanagan, one of the most prolific filmmakers working today. He has done projects like Oculus, Hush, Doctor Sleep, The Haunting of Hill House, and many others. And this is based on a short story by Stephen King. And after The Monkey was certainly a film that was very divisive, I was interested to see how they were going to take another one of Stephen King's most well-known short stories and turn it into a feature-length film. They're doing another one a little bit later, where it's walking, yes indeed, I'm walking. But before that, let's talk about The Life of Chuck. This is told over 3 acts and tells the story of Charles Krantz, who basically is just a regular guy. We don't really know all that much about him as the film starts, and I'm going to be as vague as possible so you know just a tiny skosh of information, just a little bit. Before you go into this movie mostly blind, I would encourage that. Even if you see the trailer, it doesn't give a ton away, but it does give you the idea that it's going to have that Mike Flanagan style, where he is going to basically just be able to put his stamp, his spin on any genre. He's going to be able to mix a few genres even, and he's going to be able to create a film that many people will likely remember. For better or worse, till death do us part, we're going to see Mike Flanagan rip us apart, oh I swear. Okay, my tip my hand as to how I felt about this, but basically we have a man named Charles, nicknamed Chuck, and, well, he seems to be somebody that is quite popular, even though it seems like not a lot of people know that much about him, and then we find out more about his life as the film unfolds. I will say this film is told over 3 acts, and really the only thing I think that might turn people off as far as getting into this film might be the narrative choice, the presentation and everything. Not like Nickel Boys, not the first person perspective, which really did not appeal to me at all. Not that, but just the choice of it. The choice of how they basically wanted to tell the story of Chuck. Now, this has an incredibly loaded goddamn cast. That's really about all I can come up with as far as a non-spoiler description. I will say, though, there are a couple of magnificent soundtrack choices. There is a really, really good part in the second act that absolutely is fucking cinema that I will talk about in the spoiler section. But you have Chuck played by a few different people because this is told over multiple time periods, from young man to adult and everything. Tom Hiddleston plays adult Chuck, shall we say. Teen Chuck is Jacob Tremblay, who was in Luca. And then you have Benjamin Pajak, who plays Kid Chuck. And then you have another Chuck, Cody Flanagan. The bottom line is you have a lot of people playing Chuck. What's up, Chuck? You also have Chiwetel Ejiofor. I always screw that up. He was in 12 Years a Slave. He was also in the most recent Bridget Jones movie that I actually ended up liking a whole lot more than I expected. You also have the very gifted and very honest to God smoke show gorgeous Karen Gillan. I always add an extra I there for some reason. She was also in Oculus, so she's worked with Mike Flanagan before. You have Mia Sarah, who was in Time Cop. She was also in Ferris Bueller. She was also in Legend. Look up who she was in Legend. You might be surprised by that. And it has Mark Hamill as David, the guy from Late Night with the Devil. I always screw up his name. He was also in Rosario. That was not very good. Matthew Lillard has a cameo in this. Violet McGraw, who's had quite the career for a young lady so far. And you have Franklin Rich, who did The Artifice Girl. That is something you guys need to check out. After you see The Life of Chuck, you really need to check out The Artifice Girl. One of the most unsung, tremendous movies of the decade so far. Nick Offerman is the narrator. And Lauren Lavera has a cameo in this. Yes, the girl that was in Terrifier 2 and 3, which I didn't know until I saw the goddamn cast because there were so many people featured in this. It was absolutely insane. So, we basically see how things come together eventually. Again, the narrative choices may turn some people off, but once you see how things play out, you can work it in your mind and you can see how this is honestly one of the best movies of the year. I had a fucking blast. I had a fucking blast with this. This will make you laugh. This will make you tear up. Nick Offerman's tremendous as a narrator. There are some heartwarming scenes in this. There are some scenes that will stick with you. And it also really is just a mixture of life lessons, dark comedy, and, how much time do we have left on this earth? Can we make this time count the most? We can all have dreams. We can all have things that we end up doing. It's almost like a Twilight Zone episode, like an extended Twilight Zone episode, but in a good way. That's not in a bad way at all. Mike Flanagan has truly created a magical movie here, and one that I encourage people to check out. I was able to catch an early screening because this was the Regal Mystery movie, and I'm absolutely thrilled that I was able to do it. This was fucking great. Mark Hamill's magnificent in this. There are some great scenes with family. There's some great stuff with dance. I will say that much. That's something I think that was shown in the trailer. And there's a couple scenes with dance I'll talk about in the spoilers. But this is really, really great. It's something you need to check out. Check it out in theaters. Do it. Do it when it comes out. It's coming out very soon. I'm going to get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. I have to get into spoilers here because, my God, so much great shit to talk about. We start with Act 3. That's probably where people are going to be turned off, or some people. So it starts basically at the end, essentially. And that one is, thanks, Chuck. So basically, the world is not going all that well. You have Marty Chiwetel, who is a teacher, and he has an ex-wife, Felicia, played by Karen. We find that out as things go on, and everybody keeps seeing these billboards for, Charles, Krantz, 39 great years. Thanks, Chuck. Who is he? Who is Chuck? What is going on with Chuck? Why is he so important? Not that there's anything against him. They don't have anything against this guy in particular, but they keep seeing the stuff. Oh, yes, and by the way, also California is breaking apart and going into the goddamn ocean. The Midwest is on fire. Europe is absolutely just insanely engulfed in tragedy. And the world is ending, essentially. The world is being snuffed out. The internet has been spotty for the last 8 months. That goes. Mobile networks go. Supplies are drying up. Electricity eventually runs out. That is fucking dark and is great Mike Flanagan work. It is some incredible work there. Some incredible acting. Some great stuff where it's like, they debate, are these really the end times? Will life go on? There's the stuff about Carl Sagan and a theory. What if the entire timeline of this universe, of this planet in particular, maybe this universe, was just, condensed into a calendar year? And there's this great conversation with Chiwetel and Karen over the phone where he's talking about all this stuff. He's been, teaching the kids about that. And he describes basically, the Milky Way isn't created until May and all this stuff, just condensing all these years and all the, this time just condensed like that and everything. And that basically humanity isn't created until the very end. And so all this stuff's being accelerated. All this stuff's going on. So what if that's actually the case? What if it's the end times? And there's the point where he decides to, after basically his sinkholes are developing, Matthew Lillard has a great part as a handyman here. I'm really glad to see him still having serious roles as time goes on. Let's face it, these days you gotta have a sequel. Just stew. Just Matthew Lillard's so cool. Yeah, I wish that they would have given him better stuff to do in Five Nights at Freddy's, but I digress. He has a great scene there. There's this just feeling of dread. All this stuff's going on with Chuck and, Charles. What's happening here? All these billboards. There is an earlier scene where Marty is talking to a funeral director who had these dreams of being a weatherman, but that wasn't how his life was going to go. And that essentially, stuff is unraveling. He talks about how, about math and everything. The math can do a lot of things. It can be art, but it can't lie. And then he's kind of tired. He's so tired. And he describes a lot of the stuff that actually gets set up a little bit later on in Act 2 and Act 1. That's how it works. We're not going from Act 3 to Act 5, because that would have been really confusing. Basically, Marty decides to run to his wife, or his ex-wife, Felicia, Karen, and lights are going out and everything. Violet McGraw was just out skating, but then the electricity's going out. He sees his wife. or his ex-wife, and they've like have one final union. There's all these images of Chuck, from the billboard and everything, like these, like this VR, like CGI stuff. It's really strange. I mean, it's peak Mike Flanagan with how strange he is as a filmmaker, and I mean that with respect. But they're watching along, and there's all this, all this destruction's going on. They got no access to the internet. They got to go back to this stuff. David from Late Night with the Devil, a bit before that, when Marty is talking about stuff in school, says, well, geez, I mean, what if Pornhub never comes back? I mean, there's some good comedy here, some really, really good dark comedy. But basically, the third act ends with Marty and Felicia looking up at the stars. They've never seen them so clear, and then suddenly, the North Star goes out. Mars goes out. All this stuff is going out. The universe is done. So, we then go to Act 2. Buskers Forever. It was actually a thing early, or a little bit near, just before the end of Act 3, where you see various, like, spray painted stuff, like we're straight out of Jet Set Radio. That's a really, really old school reference that not that many people are getting. Whoever played Jet Set Radio, let me know in the comments. But one thing you see is Buskers Forever. Buskers refers to, basically, we see Chuck before he died, because that's the thing. Chuck's life is done. He's going to die at 39 years old. He's bedridden. He has his wife there, his son, no doubt, and things aren't, things aren't great because he's very, very sick. But then we go backwards a little bit, and we see him as a banker. We see this girl, Taylor, who is playing drums on the street just to earn money and stuff like that because she was at Juilliard. And all this stuff is really, just all this stuff is kind of just like told, like, really fast by Nick Offerman. Nick Offerman's fucking amazing. You don't ever get a chance to see him, but he's so great. He was so great in Civil War as well. But, you get to see, I do have to say, I didn't write her down, but the one that played Taylor, she did a really good job. She was only in a few scenes, but she did really well as well. But she starts playing these drums and everything, and not getting a whole lot of money, this kind of stuff. It's just a typical street, not a lot of people just walking, not a lot of cars, oddly enough. I don't necessarily get it, but it's fine. And Chuck is walking along, and the narration says he doesn't realize he's going to die in 9 months. He doesn't realize that yet. But something about the drums makes him stop, and he starts doing a dance. Also, just before this, there's this redhead, played by this one young lady, I believe Annalise, I think is her first name. And she had just had a really, really bad breakup with her boyfriend. I had to say she had a good look as far as how they utilized her here, kind of old school, new school with the way they did the music and everything. Could have really just taken her straight out of the 50s with the sundress and all that. But he just starts doing a little dance and everything. We're wondering why he's suddenly dancing. He dances with the redhead. It's really nice. It's just a great thing. And all this stuff. It's fucking cinema. It's fucking magnificent. I almost think I have to go watch this again just to experience it in theaters. Except it's not out till this weekend, and I have a bunch of other stuff to watch. But I may have to actually rent this again just to witness that scene. That is how great that goddamn scene was. So they're doing all they're doing. Great dance, great stuff. I mean, really, really fucking great. And everybody's cheering. An encore? No. People were throwing money in the hats, so it was a lot of great stuff. And you would think, okay, Taylor really needs this money. She might give a little bit of a cut. She gives a little bit of a cut to the redhead, but she also gives a cut to Chuck. Hey, we did all that together and everything. We could take this act on the road. And he's like, yeah, that's okay. During the scene, the dance scene, he also has to take his glasses off because he has a headache. That leads to his unfortunate death because it's a brain tumor. By the way, it's a brain tumor. So that's a great dance scene. That's all that stuff going on. And Chuck ended up stopping because something happened with dance back in his back in his youth. He was a troubled youth, as it were, and stuff to do with family. So then, that's a great scene. And Act 2 isn't way too long, but we do see some other people. We see like Violet McGraw's characters skating and stuff like that as Chuck's kind of experiencing this. Has a whirlwind day with, hanging out with Taylor, hanging out with the redhead, but then parts because he has a wife at home and everything. There's no romance and everything. It's just very sweet. And he says, I know you had a breakup. You're going to be all right. Act 1 then is I Contain Multitudes. And that goes back to, like the infinite power of the universe and that kind of stuff. So basically, he loses his family at a very young age. His mother, father, and they had a granddaughter on the way. But they hit an icy patch in the road, and they died. So we have the grandmother's magnificent performance, by the way, and the grandfather, Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill, he's almost unrecognizable until you see he's in the cast, and then you recognize it's Mark Hamill because it's Mark fucking Hamill, and those eyes will say it right there. He is great as a grandfather, who's an accountant and does bookkeeping for a lot of people and has saved a lot of businesses and everything with math and stuff like that. And math is something that factors in a little bit. Remember, the funeral director talking about math. All ties together. So, how did the dance come together? Well, his grandma liked to dance, and there was some great stuff. So glad we made it. So glad we made it. That song that I can't remember the name of right now, but that was a great scene. I love how, even though this was taking place, I think in the 80s, I think it was supposed to be in the 80s, at least this part with Chuck, that it almost felt like it could have been back from the 60s with some of the styles, which I really fucking appreciated. And there was this locked room called the Cupola. Now, a little bit earlier, Marty was in a house that had a locked room. The same house that Chuck grew up in. And he has grandparents and stuff like that. And everything was going good. He took up dance. And things were going well. But in the interim, unfortunately, his grandmother passed away. Fell at the grocery store, whatever it was. It was told in humor. Trying to get bread. Man, just loafing around there. Why don't you, Grandma? Wish my grandma had lived longer. She died when I was 9. But anyway, that would definitely fuck up with a kid. And he's still doing the dancing. Meets a girl named Kat. Like, there's really some great stuff here. Some great stuff here. First love, that kind of stuff. Even if it never develops into anything, you realize that things are going to be all right. The teacher is the dance teacher is telling them about that. But before that, you have a teacher that basically at the end of 6th grade does like this. What's in here? What's in here? Like, my brain? Well, no, what's in here is a multitude of, possibilities and stuff that you're going to create in your head. This is your world. This is something you're going to create. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. Basically, she talks about all the people, all the scenarios, all the cities, all the stuff that he's gonna witness, he's gonna create, he's gonna have everything in his head. He's gonna have the stuff in his head. Multitudes, all that. Which kind of gives you an idea once you recognize, thinking back to Act 2 and Act 3, how there are interwoven characters, that maybe this stuff is in his mind, and the reason that the world ends is because this is his world, he dies, and everybody in it is gone. Now that's probably the story, because I don't think this one man would, have the fate of the world hinging on him, but the whole thing is about all this. Teacher tells him that. He gets into dance. He has this great thing with this girl. And they're going to have this dance at this prom, shall we say, even though she's a grade above him. And then they're talking and all that. And everything's going well. But then the grandma dies. The grandfather, Mark Hamill, talks about math and all that and everything. Math isn't boring. Math is, I've saved a lot of businesses. Saved a lot of that stuff. because math, is woven into dance, is woven into everything. There was something the funeral director said earlier in Act 3 to Marty about how it's not 24 hours in a day, it's 23 hours and 56 minutes. And now it's actually 24 hours and 2 minutes because the world is slowing down. Sure, we haven't treated our Mother Earth all that well, but no, the world's just kind of absolutely fucked. It's kind of not really, it's stopping, basically, is the idea. So essentially, he ends up going to this dance, but he won't dance because he just feels after talking to his grandfather. And his grandfather isn't saying that he can't dance. He's not saying that. But the world needs more mathematicians, that kind of stuff, than it needs dancers. People appreciate dancers, but mathematicians can make a lot of money and stuff like that. So do you want to achieve this that might not do well, or do you want to do this that may earn you money? Catch-22. So he goes to a dance, and the girl's trying to get him to dance, He doesn't want to. He says his leg hurts. And eventually she's kind of in a huff and sitting down. He goes outside. He looks at the stars and that kind of stuff. He sees a shooting star go. He sees that as a sign and decides to go back and dance. He just goes back and dances and that kind of stuff. And it's a great dance number, great stuff. There's an earlier thing with moonwalking and him needing better shoes, but stuffs some toilet paper in there because they're a little bit big for him. But he dances with this girl. It's magnificently told. And then there's also this thing around the locked room, the cupola, where the reason it's locked, the grandfather talks about seeing ghosts, seeing people that have passed. Grandma's like, well, he drinks a lot, that kind of stuff and everything. Don't really take everything that he says seriously. Well, there is a part where Chuck tries to get in there when the grandfather's passed out. And he gets in there, but the grandfather's like, give that to me. Don't go in there. Don't go in there. And that's a thing. Marty left that door locked. That door was always locked. Which you have to wonder, did Marty open it and did Marty see the inevitable? Did Felicia see the inevitable? Is that why she felt it was the end times? Are all of life's answers just wrapped up in this one little freaking room? So, the grandfather's freaking out. He even grabs his arm. It's a bit of a symbolism for the fact he suffers a heart attack later. And then everything's good. Everything's good, even though he does die. So that's not good. He did pay everything. He took care of finances and stuff like that. And also the fact that the funeral director had his business saved by the grandfather. That he taught me a lot. He wanted to be a weatherman. He talked about that, but there was this one guy that could practically predict the weather 2 weeks out and stuff like that, and would get this face. Your grandfather had the same face, the weatherman face. There's a lot of shit packed into this. So for those that have not seen it, they're looking for cohesive narrative answers, you might be a little bit confused by this, but there's a lot to unpack here. And then Chuck ends up seeing that stuff. He ends up seeing the keys, the effects. He goes in the room and he sees... He sees this room. It's just this cupola. This nice room with a nice view. And he sees somebody on a bed. It's him. Deep down, he knows it's him. He doesn't know how far in the future it is. But he says, I'm going to live. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to do what I need to do. Because I have multitudes. I have multitudes, or I contain multitudes. And yeah, that pretty much. Then he leaves the door open, and then the film just ends right there. That is the life of Chuck. That is definitely a great film. It is definitely an odd film, and yeah, again, the narrative choices of telling the story backwards might bother some people. I don't know, but it worked for me, and it really makes you think about how all this stuff from Act 3 makes sense. Act 1, that's why he did the dancing in Act 2. Again, that dancing in Act 2 is fucking cinema. A+, great shit. Might even make you cry. Nearly making me cry in this review. That being said, let me know what you thought in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Redland, and until we meet again, happy trails to you.